If a person, because his soul brother passes away, he has a right to take all of his belongings, well, then a soul sister and a soul brother, they have more of a right to be mihram on one another than a physical brother or a sister would. A physical brother and a sister, they can hug one another. And if this is the case just because of the bond of blood, then what about the rights of one soul over the other when it comes to the bond of light or faith or the bond of the soul? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الإمام والمهدي وسلم تسليما السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My dear sister Fairuz.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So today we want to talk about an important topic, and that is the topic of the soul world. Why do we choose to speak about this topic? We choose to speak about this topic because it is so important that it's regarded in certain narrations from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam as being the ultimate distinguisher for identifying who the Imam is, who the Qa'im is. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, when the Qa'im rises, that the brother would inherit from his brother in the soul world. Know him from that. And whoever knows him from that, there remains no further identifier, right? No further proof that's greater than that. Yes. And so the idea here is that this is the ultimate way to know who the Qa'im is. And we get insight into the fact that there is something that's called the soul world, and that there is something called a soul family, or else how would a person in the soul world or a soul inherit from his soul brother? Mm-hmm. Usually a person would inherit from their physical family. And so let's examine this topic a little bit. So regardless of religion, regardless of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, or any other religion on the planet, all religions believe in the fact that when a person dies, he goes somewhere else. That there happens a disconnect between two aspects of a human being, the soul and the body. They believe, most religions believe that the soul enters the body at birth and it leaves the body at death. So the question becomes, where did this soul come from and where has it gone to? And it becomes a question as well of, well, what am I? Am I the soul or am I the body? Mm-hmm. Because the body perishes. It goes back to the earth, as to where the soul continues on. And those who believe in reincarnation, they believe that the soul has many bodies that it rides into or wears as a person would wear a shirt or items of clothing. And so certainly in the view of those who believe in reincarnation, the body is not really a part of us. It's just an external object by way that we experience this physical world for a time being, right? Yes. And also those who believe, like Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, I mean, they don't believe that a person goes into paradise with his physical body. Rather, they believe that a person goes into paradise with their soul. And so the body is something which they leave behind. There's narrations from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam where the Prophet Muhammad and the Ahlul Bayt have made it clear that the souls were created before the body by thousands and thousands of years. You know, and some narrations make it seem like it was the soul was created before all of physical existence. Yeah, that the souls existed from before. And so it can't be that the physical body dictates, and the relationships that we have here in the physical world dictates the physical relations in the hereafter, but rather, if anything, it should be the physical relations in the soul world that would dictate the non-physical relations in the soul world would dictate the physical relations here on earth. And what I mean by that is that if a person is a believer, for example, and he has a family member who's a non-believer, and a person who is good having a family member who is evil. And you have examples of this. For example, you have Noah and his wife. His wife, in the Quran, she was told to enter into the hellfire, as well as the wife of Lot, who was punished, and not just in the Quran, but also in the Bible and the Torah. And so when the Prophet Noah or Prophet Lot, they enter into paradise, they're not going to have anymore as a wife in that realm or a companion in that realm, their wives from the physical world. So what does that mean then? If wives exist or partners exist or mates exist in some sort of capacity, if soulmates exist, well, then obviously Noah and Lot in the hereafter are either going to remain without a partner, which is contradictory to what the narrations have told us and the teachings have told us, that all people, especially in Islam, when they go to paradise, they will be with those individuals that they love, and they would be with their spouse and those individuals that are close to them. So they'd either remain without a partner, or they would have to have a different partner. There would have to be somebody else who was more worthy, a real soulmate, a real partner, that their connection is beyond the physical. And this idea of a partner who's the true partner is something which even people that don't believe in religion, they speak about a lot, and it's this concept of a soulmate. And that's why people, they feel in their life, a lot of them, that they're longing to find this individual that was kind of like created for them, and they for them, and somebody who is perfectly matched with them. And when people are lucky enough to find this individual in this world, what do they say? They say, "I found my soulmate." And so it is something which without them realizing necessarily what they are saying, they're speaking of this bond that was created between two souls, that is greater and higher than this physical world. And people that don't find their soulmates, and they end up in relationships that are not ideal, they long to find a soulmate. By longing, they recognize, and by admitting that their current partner is not their soulmate, they recognize that there exists a true marriage, a true bond that is beyond the physical realm. Okay, so now that we've kind of like explained this idea, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family. So the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they mentioned this idea of people as soul brother inheriting, from a person inheriting from his brother in the souls rather than his physical brother. We also know that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, in the beginning of Islam, he paired between the Muslims for a certain period of time and made the believers inherit from one another. And the verse from the Quran came down in which it said, verily the believers are brothers, to indicate that believers are true family, even that there's something which is greater, and it is belief that bonds and creates and makes a family, and not just the physical relationships. We have sayings from other prophets and messengers that indicate too that there is this familial relationship that's higher than the physical one, that bonds people, and it also is around, or it's rotating around faith. Faith is this glue that kind of builds this relationship or this bond between people that's greater than the bond that they have by the womb or by the blood. And that was Jesus, peace be upon him, when he was preaching one day, and his companions come to them, and he says, they say, your mother and your siblings are outside and they want to speak to you. And he says, these are my siblings, these are my family, these are my mother and my father and my family members. And he points towards the believers. And so Jesus, we have forming and admitting and acknowledging and pointing out that he has a family other than his physical family. The Prophet Muhammad, the Quran, it states, and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, stating that there is a bond that is greater than the physical bond, the blood bond. There are quotes from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and the prophets and messengers that indicate that so many a times a person's enemy is born from his own household. And yet other quotes that state from Imam Ali and the Ahlul Bayt and the prophets and messengers that two friends are one soul that's divided on two bodies. And so we have very clearly this idea of two families. One family that is a physical one, your physical mother and father, your physical brothers and sisters, your physical children. And another family that's kind of like the family that you were meant to be with. Just like you're meant to be with your soulmate, but you don't always end up with your soulmate. There seems to be this idea in religion, there is this idea in religion that there are these mothers and fathers, these brothers and sisters, these sons and daughters that you are meant to be with, that a person is not always born into. But rather the ones that you are born into, at times this ends up being your fitna. And the Quran states this, and the Hadith states this, that your children are fitna, your spouses are fitna. Your mothers and your fathers, don't obey them when it goes against God, right? And so this is the idea. When we look at it also from a logical perspective, if the soul was created before the body, then it must have came from somewhere.
Yes.
And if it's possible that a mother or a father be a non-believer, then it doesn't make sense that a non-believing soul, a soul which is dark, which is absent of faith, give birth to a soul which has life.
Yes.
So we have narrations from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam that are mystical in nature, that contain secrets that were not understood by the people at that time. For example, when the Prophet Muhammad said, Fatima is the mother of her father. This was a confusing narration. People understood it to carry great meaning and significance because it is praising Fatima Zahra to the degree that it's elevating her to being at the station of the mother of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they didn't really understand what it meant, and it can't be understood except through the context of the soul world. That Fatima in the physical world is the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, but the Prophet Muhammad was trying to say that in reality, in the soul world, Fatima is the mother of her father, is the mother of the Prophet Muhammad. So that is the true meaning to it. Now, what pertains to us and what the focus of this episode and this conversation is about the fact that now if we have the Qa'im being identified by rearranging family ties to where a brother would know his soul brother and would inherit from his soul brother, and that and we know that the Prophet Muhammad did so beforehand, and we know that the prophets and the messengers, they indicated that there is something as a soul world. Then what else will be rearranged in this new period, this new time that comes after Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam? How will family relationships exist? How can we understand the jurisprudence within that context? Okay, and if it is a natural conclusion to draw that if a person will know who his soul brother is, then he will know who his soul mother or father is. He will know who his soul children are, and he will know who his soulmate is. And that is one of the things that one of the realities that Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam has brought, and which will be implemented, this new rearrangement of family ties. And we have this narration in a book which is called Al-Haft al-Sharif, and it speaks about how the verse from the Quran, وَلَنْ يَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ سَبِيلًا, that the meaning of this verse actually, or one of its meanings, applies to the woman who is married to a non-believing man. And God, the verse says, will not make for the disbelievers a hand or a way over the believers. And so what this verse means, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, is that if a woman comes and she testifies to the Imam, or she testifies to some of her believing brothers, that her husband is a nasibi, he hates the Ahlul Bayt, he denies their rights, he's not a believer in them, and he dislikes them, he has a stance of enmity towards them, that she can confess this, state this, and she would be given the right to divorce from this man automatically. Why? Because a woman is bound by contract to a man, so she has certain obligations towards him. He will influence and control her decisions in life, and at the very least, even if they're equal partners, it will affect her path, so she can automatically exit out of this contract of marriage because of this verse, because God would never allow for a disbeliever to have a hold over a believer. And so the marital contracts become invalid in the same way that the inheritance contracts between individuals that are bound by blood but not by faith and not by the soul will become invalid.
Yes, and it further shows that it is the faith really that's the criteria for those relationships, because if it was the physical relations, then she wouldn't have the right to divorce herself from the man. So that further proves that it is this aspect of faith that shows that it is, or that makes up those relationships and defines them or determines them in the soul world.
Exactly. And that's why we found that the Prophet Muhammad, when he paired between the Muhajirin and the Ansar, that he paired people based on their faith level. People that were high in faith, he matched them with other people that were high in faith. People that are low in faith, he matched them with other people that were low in faith. There was people that ended up apostating, and they were paired with people that were also apostates. There were people that ended up dying on faith and at very high levels, and they were paired with other people that were at very high levels. And from this understanding, we then know that a person's soulmate is the person whose faith is the closest to theirs. That a woman who has a particular level of faith, and consciousness and awareness, her ideal soulmate is somebody who has the same state of mind and the same state of faith and the same state of heart. And that's why they would be ideal together, because they share in that. Versus a fake marriage, which is only bound by the physical body and by reasons of this dunya that are not of the hereafter. And when we come to this, then it opens up the controversial door of what other rights and what other new things will be established in the time of the Qa'im, besides the jurisprudence that pertains to inheritance. What are the rights of soul brothers and soul sisters upon one another? What happens to soulmates? Well, now we kind of got an insight that in the time of the Qa'im, people might end up being divorced from one another because God does not allow for a non-believer to remain in this marriage with a believer. A soul brother or sister will be ripped away. A person will be ripped away from their physical brother or sister or mother or father, and they would find a new family in faith, a new brotherhood in faith. And that's why Jesus says, I have not come to bring peace, but the sword, and states that he's going to turn mother against, daughter, and then son against father, and all of these things, because people will end up in that time when Jesus comes back, and in the time of the Mahdi, there's going to be a great rearrangement that will automatically take place based on faith. Those who accept and those who find their family members in the time of the Qa'im versus those who, are bound by the flesh.
This saying of Jesus now, it has a whole new level of meaning and understanding, because now we understand why it means that he would turn a father against his or a mother against her daughter, because of that, because they would be rearranged based on faith, and if they're not matching, then they would be turned against each other. So now it makes sense.
And people they used to object to these sayings, or wonder about these sayings and say, well, this is not really the morals and the manners of the prophets and the messengers. How can a prophet or messenger teach to rebel against one's parents? It's because he's teaching them to rebel against parents that are not really in reality their parents. But rather their parents are the ones that believe and say and do the works of the Father. And so now we have a new world, a soul world, a new family, in which at the very head of it is God Almighty. He is the one that is the base for this tree, this righteous tree that's mentioned in the Quran. And in the Quran we have two trees, a cursed tree and a righteous tree. And the righteous tree is the tree of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, the tree of the prophets and the messengers, in which at the root of it is all of those who are the highest in faith, Fatima, Muhammad, Al-Hassan, Al-Hussein, Jesus, Imam Ali alayhi salam, and then those souls branch out, and a new tree is established where the next level of the greatest prophets and messengers are born from them, and saints and holy people, and from them is born out more and born out more and born out more until we get to the leaves and the little twigs and those who are part of that righteous tree, but perhaps the weaker in faith. And then we have this other tree, which is the cursed tree, which its base is ignorance and hypocrisy and iblis, and it has in there at its root all of those worse souls like Cain and Nimrod and Pharaoh and Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl, and branching out of those, are the disbelieving people and the hypocrites and the enemies of the prophets and the messengers. And so, in the time of the Qa'im, the soul world will be established, and people will be paired with their soulmate, and they'll discover their soul mother and their father and their soul brothers and their soul sisters.
I remember there's this narration that talks about the good tree and the bad tree in the Quran. I thought of it when you were talking about them, and I remember that the Ahl al-Bayt would interpret that the good tree is the tree of the family of Muhammad, and the bad tree is the tree of the enemies of the family of Muhammad. But in the physical world, you would have, for example, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, who's the son of Abu Bakr, and he was a lover of the Ahl al-Bayt. So it doesn't make sense that this would be about the physical world, because like you said, it's the good souls would come from good souls. So then there must be another meaning to it, and there must be that it is arranged in the way that you just explained. This is the only way that we could understand it. Because then if God would not make a good soul come out of a good soul, come out of a bad soul, then there must be another family tree or family relations where it is not like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, light begets light, darkness begets darkness. It is impossible that darkness beget light. And I think all religions agree on this fact. And for that reason, they believe that the source of all things is light. And that's God and the light of God. Because you can't have evil that begets good. But you can have good that eventually would beget evil through confusion, ignorance, or being meshed with darkness in one way, shape, or form, or through good intentions that ultimately result in bad things. But you can't have bad intentions that end up resulting in a good thing. Do you understand?
Yes.
Somebody could have the intention of saving somebody, but by accident they kill them. But there's nobody that has the intention to kill somebody or do something bad or cheat somebody or steal from somebody, and in the end they end up doing them good. This doesn't exist.
Yes.
And so in the soul world, all those good believing souls, they have to go back to that. And we know also that in the time of the Qa'im, the narrations state that the Qa'im will say many things that the people will object to. And they'll think that he is a Dajjal or a Shaitan. And also it states in many narrations that the scholars, they fight against him. And the companions even, they run away from him when they hear certain things that he states. And if we go along the lines of the interpretation and the reading of the Quran and the jurisprudence through the eyes of the, with this new understanding of the soul world, then what we can deduct from that, or what we can deduce from that is that, or conclude from that, is that if a person, because his soul brother passes away, he has a right to take all of his belongings, well, then a soul sister and a soul brother, they have more of a right to be mihram on one another than a physical brother or a sister would. A physical brother and a sister, they can hug one another. And if this is the case just because of the bond of blood, then what about the rights of one soul over the other when it comes to the bond of light or faith or the bond of the soul? And so we find that the soul brother and sister would be mihram on one another. A person would be mihram to his soul mother, or a woman be mihram to her soul father, and they would have more of a right to have physical contact with one another in ways that a normal physical family or unit would have. And I think that this would be one of those things that, and it is one of those things that would drive maybe a lot of people away and make them feel disgust and fear, while it would cause all those people that have light and recognize the truth of what it is that I'm saying to feel joy and excitement about knowing who it is that they really belong to.
I was gonna say, you could only see it as you could only see the justice and beauty in this, and if anyone would reject that or feel appalled by that, it's only because they're limiting themselves to this physical world. And I feel it's such a relief for a person to know that if the family that they're born in with, or if they're not sharing the same faith, or if this bond of faith is not existing, that there is something that they do have a family, a soul family where this bond of faith exists. And if people accept that there is a soulmate and they call it a soulmate, then why would they not accept that there would be a soul brother or a soul sister if they do accept this idea? And they do, like you mentioned, they do say that it is culture. But it is such a relief, and I cannot imagine. I feel it's just that it's justice from God and beauty from God, that you wouldn't have to be, that you're not trapped, or you don't have to be with a family that you don't share that same bond with, and the bond of faith is stronger. That many people feel that they don't feel that connection with the physical family that they're born in.
I would argue to say that most people don't feel that connection with their physical family as much as they do with their friends or with other people that they grow close to throughout life. And I think it's a gross misunderstanding and misinterpretation of scripture and sayings when people automatically assume that in paradise they will be resurrected with, or they will go to heaven to be with for all eternity those members from their physical household, because there's nothing that really proves that. What the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and his family did say is that the person will be resurrected with who he loves. يحشر المرء مع من يحب. And so the person is resurrected with he or she that they love. And so all those people that they find their souls inclined towards, that is the family that they are resurrected with in the hereafter. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Fairuz. I think we'll stop there because that's enough, I think, food for thought for this episode to introduce this very complex, topic and idea to people, that there is a family that's beyond this family, and that people actually have an obligation, per the words of Jesus and the prophets, to leave their own physical families in order to find that soul family, and that there is a bond that ties us more than blood, and that is faith and belief.
Thank you so much for revealing this and explaining this for us.
God bless you.
Thank you.